a second, guys. Give me a second. Friction brake, straighten out. Smooth stop. All right, guys, if that's something that you're interested in learning how to do and doing it with confidence, I talk about it all the time on this channel, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into exactly what I'm doing with my throttle, with my clutch, and with my rear brake and how I'm using them, and a couple of other things too. Okay, guys? That's what this video is going to be about. All right, intro. Keep it loaded, keep it loaded, keep it loaded, keep it loaded. Man, and I'm looking at the camera. Head and on, good, good, good. Preloaders, V.I.Preloaders, welcome back to the channel, guys. Always a pleasure to have you guys here with me, and you've noticed by now, or at least you should. For those of you that have never been to the channel before, you're in for a treat. I want to welcome you as well. My name's Robert. I'm a retired NYPD Highway Patrol Motorcycle Lieutenant, and the name of this wonderful channel is Be the Boss of Your Motorcycle. And as I always say, it's not just referring to this type of motorcycle, a touring, bagger, big, no. This applies to all types of motorcycles. And what I'm going to talk to you about in today's video applies to every motorcycle except if you're riding a DCT. Same things apply, but you have to make some modifications on the fact that you don't have a clutch, right? In your case, you're going to be using the throttle and the rear brake, and that's it. But today I want to talk to you guys about riding in the friction zone, doing slow speed maneuvers, and I'm talking about right from the start, like right when you first start moving your motorcycle. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this channel, I do practice sessions on this channel, I do private lessons, and I do riding tips and all types of videos, right? But the main focus is getting you comfortable and confident riding your motorcycle at slow speeds. And then hopefully once you get comfortable and confident, you are gonna love riding way more, I can guarantee you that. But the hope is that you share that knowledge with other riders, because we got work to do here, guys. It's very upside down as far as how many people actually know how to ride a motorcycle properly versus those that don't. If you need a number for that, 98% of motorcycle riders really don't know how to operate one of these things properly. Also, the way you become a boss of the motorcycle, remember, being the boss of anything means you're gonna have a higher level of responsibility. And your responsibility level goes up when you slow down on these motorcycles. And that's why most of us don't feel comfortable going slow. In fact, we hate it, right? You wanna get the bike up to speed as quickly as possible, because once it's going faster, your responsibility goes down. How much down? It may as well be zero, because as it pertains to keeping the motorcycle upright, once you're going fast, the bike doesn't need you at all. How many times have you seen a motorcycle fall, the rider fall off, and if there's still power on that rear wheel and the rear wheel is on contact with the road, the bike will pick back up and keep going, because what does the motorcycle always want to do with power on the rear wheel? It wants to stand up and it wants to go straight. Anyway, don't get me started, guys. I'm gonna do my best to try to stay on task in this video, because I want you guys to understand I'm always trying to give you as much information as I think that you need and that you can use. And because we all learn differently, some of you might be like, hey, come on, just get to the other stuff, whereas a bunch of us might need that other stuff, right? So what I am going to say is, if you haven't watched my videos yet, go watch a practice session video, and that's going to get into more of the meat and potatoes of what some of the terminology is on this channel as far as preload and keep it loaded and the first 5 steps. And all of these things, because trust me, guys, it's going to be worth your time. You don't have to watch the whole practice session video, even though it will be beneficial for you. But they all have chapters on them. Go to the briefing and instructions chapter and watch that on. until you get up to the warm-up exercise. Watch all of that explanation. That's gonna help tie this all in. All right, so today, guys, I'm not only gonna talk to you about my clutch and my throttle and my rear brake, but I'm gonna put a camera on my clutch hand. I've been getting a lot of requests about that. When I'm moving, it's not a lot of movement. I talk about that often, but I just wanna show you guys what I'm doing and talk to you while I'm doing it. So I'm gonna get on the bike, and first I'm gonna talk to you about what I do when I first get ready to move a motorcycle as far as the throttle, the clutch, and the rear brake. All right, let's do it. All right, guys, so I can't emphasize how difficult this is for me to talk to you about this without talking about the stuff before it, because that's one of the main problems. The main problem is everybody wants to jump to one thing when really they're skipping a bunch of other things that they don't even realize they should be focusing on. And that's the main reason why in my private lessons, when people say, Rob, I just need help with U-turns, I always say, okay, great. But we don't start with U-turns, because out here, U-turns is exercise number 6, right? So that means there's 5 other things we have to do before we even get to U-turns, and things we have to discuss and such and such. But the good thing is, the things that we discuss in the beginning, once we get that, it's relevant all the way up until exercise number 9 in anything you do on your motorcycle, okay? All right, so let's talk about this clutch. So I got my 360 camera recording my clutch hand, so I can give you guys a little bit more of, I know, listen, a video is worth 1,000 words. You can hear me say something 1,000,000 times, so we're gonna do it. All right, right now the bike's off because I want you to be able to hear me clearly. When I first get on my motorcycle, or anybody's motorcycle, the reason why I'm not really worried about dropping anybody's motorcycle, it doesn't matter if I've never ridden on it before, is because, like I always say, the rules don't change. First thing I'm gonna do, with the motorcycle running, of course, is I'm gonna figure out where the friction zone starts on that motorcycle, right? So I'm gonna pull a clutch all the way in, and then I'm gonna slowly start opening the clutch until I feel the bike start to move a little bit. And as soon as I feel that, I'm gonna pull the clutch right back before it. So now I'm not in the friction zone, I'm right before it. You know what, guys? Let's talk about this. Now, I made this up a few months ago, and I want you to, let me preface this by saying, this doesn't exist, but I think it's gonna help you understand all of this better. There's 5 stages in the friction zone. Remember, this doesn't exist. 5 stages. Stage 0 is the clutch, all the way to the grip. This means you have 0 power, nothing. This is what people do often when they feel, oh crap. They clench in, because that's natural to do, pull the clutch all the way in, and so now that falling feeling that they felt, they did the opposite of what you should have done. If it's falling, that means you don't have enough power. You pull it all the way to 0, now you have no power. So that means it's, not only is it gonna keep falling, it's gonna fall even faster, right? So that's 0. Stage 1 is when you open up the clutch. Now this is the only thing that's gonna be different for most of us, because what does variate is the space between 0 and 1. Once you get to 1, the space in the friction zone, for the most part, is pretty much the same. We're not dealing with a lot of space here, right? So all the way to the grip is 0. Start opening the clutch slowly until I feel it start to move. That's 1. The more I open the clutch, the higher the stages. 2, 3, 4, 5. After 5, the clutch is all the way open. You're no longer in the friction zone. So these are just stages of the friction zone. That's why I call it the first 5 stages of the friction zone. Remember that. So depending on what I'm gonna do, is gonna depend on what stage of the friction zone I'm gonna be in, right? So if I'm gonna take off, it's a red light and now it turns green, and I'm just gonna take off, then this doesn't really apply. But what does apply is we're still gonna make sure that we preload the throttle. We always have to do that, because if we don't preload the throttle and we just open up the clutch, that's when our motorcycles stall. That happens to people all the time. And listen, if you're doing that when the motorcycle's going straight, yeah, you're probably gonna do the same thing when you're turning. That's when it's worse, because if it stalls straight up, not a huge deal. But if we're turning or leaning and the bike stalls, that's when the bike could drop. Again, not a huge deal, but we don't wanna drop the motorcycle if we don't have to. We don't wanna stall and we don't wanna fall, but we understand that if that happens, it's not a huge deal. Okay, so when it comes to the slow speed riding, right, and the slow speed maneuvers, you ever heard somebody say life is about give and take? Well, that's exactly what you have to do on this motorcycle with power to the rear wheel. It's all about giving and taking. And you give and take based on what you feel, right? So if I feel the motorcycle falling, I need to give it power so I can stand it up. And the opposite, if I'm giving it too much power, now I have to take some power away. Now that can either be by using the rear brake, or by pulling the clutch in a little bit. So, speaking of the rear brake, guys, the rear brake and power to the rear wheel, meaning your clutch, they work together in harmony. And let me also let you guys know, when I first start to move my motorcycle, no matter what I'm getting ready to do, I never start, well, let me not say never. It's very rare that I start from the grip. And that's what a lot of people do. Because if I start from the grip, now I have to find stage 1 or stage 2. And time is important. And sometimes the time it takes me to find that, let's suppose the motorcycle is starting to fall and I'm at the grip. The time I'm trying to get to stage 1, the bike is still falling. And then by the time I get to stage 1, now stage 1 is not sufficient. It's not enough power. It's going to keep falling. See, so my point is we don't ever want to get to that. So that's why we always have to pay attention to what we feel, and we're going to do something based on what we feel. So if I feel falling, the throttle is always going to be loaded. That's my goal, is to keep it loaded. I'm always listening to it. I'm going to open my clutch up to a stage 1 to start moving. And if stage 1 is sufficient, then that's where I'm going to stay. And I'm going to keep my throttle where it is. I'm going to keep my clutch where it is. But let's forget about stage 1. I'm actually going to go to stage 2 because I'm going to feel a little bit better in stage 2. And I'm talking about what I'm about to show you. If I'm in stage 2, guys, right, meaning my clutch hand is right here. Actually, on this bike, it's about right there. Now I'm in the friction zone, stage 2. There's power going to the rear wheel, and it's sufficient power for me to stay straight up, right? Once the bike starts moving, right, because obviously if I open up the clutch to stage 2, foot off the rear brake, the bike's going to start moving. Now at this point, guys, I'm going to drag my rear brake, meaning I'm going to have pressure on the brake, but it's very light pressure, guys. And that's another issue. People come out here to do these types of things, and they're too heavy on the rear brake. And so that's when you run into problems. So when people tell you, oh man, you're going to burn out your clutch, riding the motorcycle in the friction zone properly is not a problem. The clutch plates are wet, and even if they're not, you have to just, watch what you're doing, pay attention to the moderation and the brakes. But it's designed to be ridden in the friction zone. If you're in stage 1 or stage 2, 2.5, you can drag that rear brake and you're fine. Remember, we're not doing this for like extended periods of time. If you're going to make a U-turn and you want to drag the rear brake through that U-turn, what was that, 2 seconds? And then you come off the rear brake and move on with your life, right? So, stage 1, stage 2, stage 2.5, dragging the rear brake, I'm fine. When I get to the higher stages, stage 3, 3.5, 4, 5, at those stages of the friction zone, you don't want to be dragging the rear brake because now you're making them fight, right? You're making them fight. You want them to work together. You don't want them to fight. How do you know if it's too much clutch? Well, here's how you test that. Because I see it happen to people all the time. When your motorcycle's moving at slow speeds, I'm not talking about from a standstill, while it's moving, you're in the friction zone, you're dragging your rear brake, right? What I want you to do is take your foot off the rear brake completely. If you take your foot off the rear brake completely and your bike does this, that's letting you know too much clutch. You're in too high of a stage of the friction zone. Of course, taking your foot off the brake is going to change your speed because that's the purpose of you dragging it. You're shaving off speed, but it's minimal, guys, minimal. Remember, clutch reigns supreme. The clutch control is what you're really trying to do. So a lot of the stuff that I do out here, yeah, I could do it without the rear brake, but your rear brake gives you correction and control. And I want to be in as much control as possible. Plus, it's going to make it smoother. Because the give and take that I was telling you about, if I go to make a U-turn or anything slow speed, if I'm in a stage 2 and it's working, my goal is to keep it there, but there's always going to be small changes. And as long as I address it as soon as I feel it, it's not a big deal. So those small changes without the rear brake is going to require my clutch hand to be just making little minimal movements. And so that's why when I see people's clutch hand going like this, I always tell them there's no reason why I should see you doing this to your clutch. Because if your clutch is doing this, your bike is doing this, and we don't want that, all right? All right, guys, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna ride the bike. I'm gonna start from here. I'm gonna start off with covering the rear brake. I'm gonna be in a stage 1 from the start, and I'm gonna go up to a stage 2. And I'm just gonna go around in a circle, right? Straight up and down, no leaning. I'm gonna be dragging the rear brake at the same time, holding it, and if everything's working out, my goal is to keep it the same, but I'm always standing by, waiting. What am I waiting for? I'm waiting to feel something change, something different, right? And I'm gonna react accordingly, okay? So I'm gonna go around in a circle, And then I'm gonna put the motorcycle into a lean. Now, once I lean, obviously that means I need speed. I'm not gonna do anything different with my throttle. I'm gonna keep that loaded. The only thing I'm gonna do here is use my rear brake to control my speed. I'm gonna keep my clutch right where it is, stage 2. And then, when I wanna straighten the bike back up, again, I'm not gonna pull the clutch in. I'm gonna keep it in stage 2. I'm just gonna apply a little bit more brake to slow me down, straighten that motorcycle out. Again, I don't need to manipulate the clutch. I'm not saying you can't do that, because I'm also gonna show you me doing the same thing with no brake. Just gonna take some more clutch manipulation, okay? All right, let's do it. All right, first gear. Cover the rear brake. I'm gonna preload that throttle. My goal is to keep the throttle elevated, not high, not low, elevated. Right now my clutch is at 0. Slowly let out, see how the bike's moving? Pull it right before that. And now if I don't want the bike to move backwards, that's when I'll use the rear brake, but I'm fine right here. Now, I'm gonna slowly release the clutch into stage 1, pick my foot up, good to go. All right. Let me come back over to you guys. All right, clutch is still in the same spot. I'm just using the brake to control my speed here, guys. Rear brake, clutch, same spot. Rear brake, rear brake. Now if I want to lean, I'm gonna keep my clutch where it is, but take my foot off the brake a little bit. I'm still dragging it here. Clutch, same spot. You hear my throttle? Steady. That's what I'm listening to, because I don't want to stall. A little bit more pressure on the brake, slow me down. Now I'm straight up. Clutch, same spot. I can come to a stop. Clutch, same spot. Throttle loaded. Off the brake, lean. Rear brake, drag it, drag it. Right here, no brake. Now I gotta pull the clutch in a little bit. Wait to see what I feel. Hold the turn, keep the throttle up. See how the turn's getting wider? So I'm gonna pull the clutch in a little bit so I can turn more. All right, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake. Friction zone, smooth stop. So this is what I'm really trying to emphasize to you guys. I don't want you to worry about too much involvement with your clutch, because it's not necessary. Once you find a good spot, just hold it there, right? And stand by for the report. The report is from your brain. It's saying, hey, I feel falling. Because again, if you address that falling feeling as soon as you feel it, all the inputs that you put into the motorcycle will remain small. If you want to just use the clutch, very small. If you want to come off the brake a little bit, very small. So that's why even my foot shouldn't be doing anything excessive. Nothing excessive is necessary on the motorcycle as long as you address it properly. Now, I do recognize and understand that when you're trying to figure this stuff out, it's very difficult to be smooth, and that's cool. That's what we're working for, right? I always say we're out here slow dancing with the motorcycle. So when we first get out here and we first start learning how to dance, we look like somebody with 2 left feet, right? But the more you practice, the more that's gonna smooth out. Now for dancing, that ain't true for all of us. Some of us, it just ain't in us. The coordination's way off, right? And that may be true for the motorcycle too. But again, guys, my goal is to not get you to be doing a bunch of excessive stuff. I just want you to be comfortable and confident when this motorcycle slows down. All right, guys? All right, listen, I hope that helped you out, guys. Please do yourself a favor. Watch my practice session videos or watch this playlist, 13 videos in this playlist. And this is the introduction to my channel for people. Watch these 13 videos. Invest the time in this, guys. Trust me, it's free. All of this stuff is free. You don't even have to pay for it, right? You just have to, the cost is your time, but it's well worth it. All right, guys? All right, listen. If you're not subscribed to the channel, guys, please do so. That definitely helps me out. Hit that like button. That definitely helps me out too. Feeds my algorithm. Not that I pay attention to that, but I just know it does. And guys, please, I'm so passionate about this, right? And I know there's a lot of other people that are, but many aren't. So the best way to spread this knowledge is not only to learn it, but for people to see you doing it. And then they ask you, oh man, where'd you learn how to do that? And then you can discuss what you know, you can discuss the channel. And keep in mind, there's some people that they're never gonna wanna get any help from you, especially if you've been riding a motorcycle a lot less time than they have. I often say, I don't care how long you've been riding a motorcycle or how many miles you ride. I care more so about how much you've been practicing, because that's going to determine this part of it, the boss part. Anybody can go on the road and ride at speed. Okay, guys? All right, love you guys. And remember what I always say, guys, it's not about being the best, but it is about being the boss. Spend more time being thankful for the things that you have and less time complaining about the things that you don't. Seat time does not equal practice time, guys. And if you have time to ride your motorcycle, you have time to practice on it. That is not my opinion. Until next time.